Welcome back to Ebb and Flow Creative Co. My name's Emmy. Today we will be painting some easy abstract watercolor paintings. We'll be painting 3 different easy abstract paintings. The first idea is what I'm calling a lazy landscape, and that's because it kind of looks like a landscape without doing all the work. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the sky color first, about 1/3 of the way up, and we're using a bigger brush. I have this paper cut down into, it was a sheet of watercolor paper and I cut it into 4 pieces. So if you're doing a even larger one, you'll need a bigger brush than what I'm using. And I could be using a bigger brush too. So also, if you want to tape your edges to make it cleaner, you can. I kind of enjoy a kind of wonky line on the edge sometimes. All right, so we're painting that sky in. We're using lots of water so that it can bleed. And then we're going to paint the bottom part. So depending on what kind of lazy landscape you want to do, you can change the colors up. You could change it to a pink sky for a sunset over water, and do a nice blue for the water, or add sand, or whatever you want to do. But you want to add lots of water, keep it nice and diluted, and then you're going to take it up and let it meet the edge. And some colors will push into it more than others. So anything that has a lot of yellow, so I'm gonna add this yellow green, and that pushes a lot. And see how it's pushing up, and it's almost making little trees. And it's just being bled into the wet blue paint. So if you want to exaggerate it, you can. All right, so I grabbed my Kuretake set, and I'm not using this set for the most part for this because so many of the colors are opaque and I need them to be pretty translucent for this. So I'm gonna add just a thin line of green, dark green, and you can push it up in places and just let it do its work. It was a little drier there, so it's not pushing its way up. And you don't want a uniform line, so anywhere where it seems a little too uniform, maybe push it up a little higher. All right, and then we are just going to let it dry. So I'm gonna grab a hair dryer and dry this. If you're using a hair dryer, use it on low. All right, and the cool thing about this process is that it turns out differently every time depending on where the water is and how much the colors push and pull. And so sometimes the sky color will pull down into the bottom color, and that's a really cool effect too. It almost looks like it's raining when it does that. So here's my first, and you can see it does look like a landscape with very minimal effort. So if you wanted to, you could add more details to this to make it an actual landscape. All right, this is the first one. Okay, so I taped this one off because it uses a lot of water and I'm trying to keep it from curling. It'll still curl a bit, but this will make my job a little easier. So this next one will be a colorful abstract. And so we're gonna start with a few colors that we like and that we think will go pretty together. And make sure when you're doing this that there's at least one or two darker colors. All right, we'll start right there because I dropped paint there. All right, so I'm using a Titan Buff just to add a little bit of neutral in here so it's not all crazy. And then we'll add some yellow. Now remember that yellow can push and pull, it can bully colors, so it might take over. And this green gold, this Daniel Smith green gold really does that. See how pushy it is? It really likes to take over. Oh, that's really pretty. Those little weird lines that it made. All right, next I'm adding a cobalt teal. We're gonna add some bright rose. Can never have enough. And see, that yellow is pushing all the way up through the Titan Buff into this. The Titan Buff's kind of gone now, and that's okay. So sometimes the colors will mix in a way that's not the prettiest, like where the rose mixed with the yellow and the teal. We'll add more teal because it turned a weird green color, that yellow, and the green gold's really pushy. So where it added that, we will just add something to maybe hopefully take over and disguise it. You could have added a purple, but you want, like, you don't want to do it uniform, so don't do like this size and this size and this size and this size. Try to do random amounts. So like a tiny amount of this color, add some cobalt. And then we're gonna add more. Cobalt teal. All right, and here's where I wanna add some darker colors. So this is a phthalo turquoise, I believe. And it's a pretty darker, strong color. And I kind of like how much it contrasts because watercolor dries a lot lighter. And so you want some contrast. You don't want it just to be pale. Although, I mean, that can be nice too, but it's a lot more interesting when you've added some dark colors. So I'm adding an Enden Throne blue here. Oh, that's looking really cool. Sometimes the colors will mix in a weird way and it'll look like slop, but then it'll dry in a really cool way. So I'm gonna add just a few more little drops into the wet paint. Maybe just to add a bit more. All right, so it's not as wet there anymore, so it's not mixing as much. So we'll just blend it out. And it'll just be a nice layered effect. All right, and then that one right there is, it's very pale and a little boring, so I'm gonna add some shell pink. And it'll just add a little touch of something right there to make it a little more interesting. I like those spots where it's actually white under there, but I really like that. And then I'm gonna just see, is still wet there? Not really. So I'll just blend it out too. All right, and it's still wet there, so I'm gonna add just a couple of little dots. Soften that edge with water. And then we're going to blow dry it and see what happens. So it's mostly dry and we can remove the tape. It's always satisfying, even though this tape's not that great and it came up halfway through, but it did its job. All right. All right, this is how it turned out. I really like the mix of colors. If you're a color lover like me, this is probably up your alley. And love the granulation too. It's super nice. I'll show them again at the end so that these little like really wet bits can dry a bit more. All right, and my last one, I'm going to leave this one untaped again. All right. This one, it'll take a little bit longer because there are more steps and you have to let layers dry. All right, so the first step is we're going to paint it completely yellow. And so you want to make sure that the yellow you're using is nice and translucent. I'm using a nickel azo yellow. It's a nice warm yellow. And we're painting the entire thing with yellow. Add lots of water. That's one of the mistakes I see new watercolor artists do the most, is that they're not using enough water. So when in doubt, use more water. All right, like this even could have been thinner, but you can see through it, and so that's good. So we're going to let this dry. So if you're ever curious how to see if it's dry, besides the obvious puddles, you can kind of take it to the side, look at it from the side, and if you can see it and it's shiny, like right there, then it's still wet. The next step is that we're going to add another color, and we're going to paint about 2/3 of it in with another layer. So for that one, I'm going to be using Bright Rose because it's my favorite kind of pink color. And once again, we're making sure it's nice and diluted. Does not need to be perfectly straight line. I prefer when lines are not straight, but that's me. If you want to mark it off and make yours perfect, you can. And so what this does is it creates almost an orange layer. I like this technique because it's orange, but it's also still pink in a way, which is kind of fun. And it turns a little red too. Like you can see what color it was and the combination of them as well. So I'm going to blow dry that again, and then we'll add the third layer. Tiny bit wet, but it's okay. So the Bright Rose is a granulating color, and you can see all the pretty texture that it creates. We will be using another granulating color. If you hate granulation, you don't have to use these colors. You can use non-granulated. And granulating is just when the colors, they kind of form in little like clumps. I guess the pigment separates out in kind of little clumps and creates a neat texture. You either love it or hate it. So my next color I'm using is the cerulean blue. This is Winsor & Newton, and it's my favorite cerulean blue. And it's very pretty, and it's super granulating. And I have it very diluted again. And it almost looks like a cobalt teal over the yellow, which is fun. And then over the pink and the yellow, it turns like a purpley gray color, which I think is really fun. So you could keep going and adding more layers if you want, or you can be done like this. And it's a lot of fun to experiment with a lot of different colors and see how they interact with each other. That's part of the best part of watercolor, is seeing how the colors interact with each other and how they layer on each other. So I will blow dry this and come back and show you the finished pieces. All right, and this is the finished layered piece. And I really love how the colors turned out, and I love the textures of where there's more water or more color. Yeah, so here's this one. Here is the colorful one. And here's my lazy landscape. Now you probably are noticing that they're curled up, and that happens even with taping them. This one's less bad, but if I come back to it in a couple days, it will be completely curled up because I live in a very humid area, and that's just my reality. So if you want them to be flatter, you can let them dry all the way, put a heavy book on it. Like this one, I would place upside down, maybe even take it and manipulate it a bit, and then put a heavy book on it, and it'll straighten out. You can also spray the back of it, but I feel like that's scary because if this gets wet, then it will destroy it. So I don't really do it that way. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and please give it a like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.